Welcome to Barley and Me. I'm your host, Ben Rice. We're here today doing another Zoom interview. I'm here in my home in Sacramento, California. With us today, all the way from Durango, Colorado, it's Matt Vincent of Oh Hi Beverages.
Hi.
So, usually I'd ask you how business is at Oh Hi, but Oh Hi is a bit of a different business. So what is Oh Hi Beverage?
Oh Hi is we make cannabis infused seltzer waters, both THC infused and CBD infused. We've been open for roughly about a little over a year, year and a quarter. We started out in the THC side, and then in November, December-ish, we launched a new CBD line.
Okay, and I assume the THC one, it has a pretty limited market, considering you can only really handle around Colorado for legal reasons.
Correct. Yeah, we're distributed around Colorado in dispensaries for the THC version. The CBD version, we've got really limited distribution at this point in time, but we're looking to expand. We plan on launching actually in San Diego in probably second week of August.
Nice.
We've got some distribution in the Front Range and distribution in Southwest Colorado, hitting some grocery stores and liquor stores with the CBD version. But again, the THC version is solely in dispensaries, only in Colorado at this point.
Yeah, because those damn laws, no matter how much we all like, no one cares about this anymore. There's still people like, no, people care. Like, no one cares. Barely anyone cares.
No one cares anymore, yeah. But we got to follow the rules.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they shut you down.
Yeah, and even then, you still might shut you down. It's a wonderful system that we have. So
laws daily.
Yeah, exactly. Like, today, is this the day that we can go crazy, or is it the day we have to scale back? Like, what a daring plan for you guys. So, with the THC, these are seltzers. Are they hard seltzers, or are they just regular seltzer water?
Well, there's no alcohol in them, so when beverage is considered a hard seltzer, it usually has alcohol in it, and by law, we can't combine alcohol and THC. So,
okay,
different kind of hard seltzer.
Yeah, okay, that's a good, fair point on the turn of phrase. Yeah, I was wondering why that was, because I think as CBD and THC have gotten into more products, the beer market still has been cracked down on. Because I know I talked to Coalition Brewing in Portland, Oregon that was doing CBD beers, and they got shut down. I've talked to Black Hammer Brewing in San Francisco. They did one CBD beer and they got shut down. And they're like, fine, sell this, but you can never make it again.
Yeah, there's too much uncertainty around CBD and the and blending it with alcohol that you just can't mix them. They don't like that. Yeah, alcohol depends on firearms, but you can't have weed in there too.
Yeah, it's like, well, we don't know what these two things are going to interact like. I'm like, you know what you could do? See what happens. That's a thing you could do. You could study it. Maybe you take some home, give it to your friends, see what happens. Does it like have this is just CBD, this is just beer, this is CBD beer. Boom, what happens? But they're like, no, that's not a thing we're interested in.
Yeah, they frown upon that at this point in time. Although I've been known to sometimes mix the two, and they do actually go quite well together.
Yeah, I mean, when I had the one at Coalition, it was when they were open, they were allowed to brew. It was delicious. It was really good. I was surprised at how good it was. I don't know why. We're just adding things that are the same as hops, but slightly different.
Yep.
To it.
They don't even add a lot of flavor in their purest form either.
Right.
So it's really the functional side that you're getting, not necessarily the flavor, unless you infuse them with terpenes and things like that, where you try and extract some of the cannabis flavors out of it.
Yeah, and that's what they were doing. They had all these terpenes. They had a whole process for it. It was like crazy. They had like, oh, let's pull this drawer out of all these different combinations they'd created. Like, you want to smell this? You want to taste this? Like, this is okay. This is cool.
Nice.
But yeah, so how is business over at Oh Hi? How's that going for you guys?
It's going well. You know, we got a little bit of a hit when COVID first struck, and as a lot of people did, but since we've kind of rebounded since May, and things are picking up really well. We've brought on a new sales guy. He's doing a great job. and we're starting to see some growth. We're really excited about it and getting in some more dispensaries around Colorado, along with our expanded distribution to San Diego with our CBD version. So things are starting to take off. The sales model is very different, and kind of still trying to exactly figure that out with, obviously during COVID, they weren't really allowing in-person sales.
Yeah.
And this is because it's a relatively new product to market. It needed a lot of, in-person push to make, to really get the sales across the line. And we figured out some new things. We're doing a little bit more digital marketing, digital advertising, and added some online ordering platforms that have helped. And it's starting to pick back up as people settle into the new norm. It's kind of, they're figuring it out, and it's coming back online.
Yeah, and I know in California for like a couple days, like dispensaries are shut down. Did that happen to you guys, where they could shut it down temporarily? Then like, wait, we do need this around for people.
Well, they threatened it for about 2 hours, and then there was riots and craziness, and they reversed that decision before they even shut it down. They were going to shut down liquor stores and dispensaries.
Yeah,
and it was a mass surge at all the stores because they thought they were shutting down. So, but 2 hours later, they were, oh, okay, all right, that doesn't work. Let's not do that.
For the one time they listened to their constituents.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because like I don't dabble in these things. THC, CBD. I'm not really a weed guy. Never was. But with the shutdown, I'm like, well, maybe I try it out because it's like a safe part where I'm not like out publicly. Like there's I do stand up too, and there's this show that travels through the West Coast called the Gateway Show, where they have comics do one set completely sober. They can't have any drugs, any alcohol in their system for 24 hours before the show. They do one set completely sober, then they will get them super high in a secret location, the parking lot, and then bring them back in to do jokes again. And I was like, I don't really do weed, as you can tell from the way I say the phrase. And he's like, that's exactly what we want. We want people that don't do this. And I was like, it was terrifying. It was a horrifying experience.
Oh,
I'm like,
funny.
I don't know how I react to this. I've always been like a very paranoid high person.
Uh-huh.
And it was like, well, you're trying the wrong strains. I'm like, how the fuck would I know? I'm just taking what's handed to me, and they're like, maybe today is the day it works, and it never is. But now I get to like do it in the safety of my own home and like be like, oh, this one, I really enjoy what this does for me. Like, I take this after a long day at work, and I'm like, great. Now I feel really good. My head's clear. My body's not sore from sitting or whatever. It's great. So yeah, I think the shutdown has done a pretty good thing about helping people that maybe have been avoiding this. Like, they can try it out, see what they think.
Yeah, that's something that we, because our THC beverages are very low dosage. I say very low. It's all depends on who you're talking to.
Yeah.
But our THC beverages are one. We have a 5 milligram, then we have a 10 milligram. And personally, myself, I like 2 to 5 milligrams.
Okay.
So typically when I consume our beverages, I'll either drink a 5 or I'll take a 10 and I'll take a couple sips off it, put it back in the fridge, have a couple sips a little bit later in the evening, and then have a couple more sips and finish it off before bedtime. And that works for me. Microdosing is kind of what they call that.
Yeah.
I do find that a lot of people get into edibles and their first experience can be a tragic experience because they overconsume. It takes a long time to hit them, and they end up saying, "Oh, I can't feel it. I'm going to take another one."
Yeah.
And then, boom, you're on the couch.
Yeah.
And not enjoying things.
Yeah, exactly. I actually, I posted that I was going to be doing this, and one person was like, "Why is it this low dosage?" And I was like, I mean, you're looking at people with different levels of experience and what they're wanting their experience with this beverage to be. This is supposed to be a relaxing, very mild thing. It's not like, hey, we're going to drink one seltzer and be done for the night.
Right.
I would think that wouldn't be the best business plan.
No, we want to be able to have more than one.
Yeah.
We are looking at even a smaller dosage in the future. I know out in California, they have, there's several beverages out there that are in the 2.5 milligram range,
mm-hmm.
which actually I really have been out there and tried several of them, and I really enjoy that dosage. In Colorado, it's a little bit more of a mature market.
Yeah.
And consumers here typically the one complaint that we get from the people that are selling it are they want a stronger version. Whereas I feel like, no, we need a lighter version. We want something that people can have more than one of and still enjoy themselves.
Yeah.
So we're working on that messaging and trying to get that point across that you can have a couple of these in a night. You don't have to drink 5 of them and be couched.
Yeah. So it's kind of a mirror of beer where, like, you know, everybody's like, I want this big pastry stout and these triple IPAs. And we're like, well, you know, session beers are pretty good too. You should try them out.
Yeah. My as it relates to beer, I typically, a lot of times when I'm shopping for beer, I'm like 4.5%, sweet. Yeah. I'll take it. I tend to steer away from anything over, 7 or 8%. Yeah. Or even for a special occasion.
Yeah, 6.5 is about where I want the most to be right now.
Yep.
And I think that's, like you said, it's the mature market for beer. At least I think the mature market is we want these things that have flavor that I can have more than one of, or I can have one and not be worried about what I'm going to be doing later. Whereas there's like the new people coming into it are so excited about it. They're like, we want to see how crazy this can get. And you're like, oh, take it easy, man. We got a whole life to live.
It's a little bit different in the weed side because there's so many inexperienced consumers out there. We're trying to push, the product that we make at Oh Hi is we really are trying to attract new people and get people that haven't really tried cannabis before to give it a shot and try it in a low dosage and attract those people. It's a little hard to attract those people because you can't advertise in the right channels.
Yeah.
So you have to get them into the dispensary first. Then you have to get the dispensary to tell them that this is what they should try versus, it's a different model in a liquor store where you have a shelf and you get to choose and people know a lot about it. Beer's been around for thousands of years. It's fairly reliable, whereas there's still a lot of questions around cannabis at this point.
Yeah. And does the feeling of a liquid delivery system, especially through a seltzer, does that affect what the milligrams actually do for you?
It actually does. It affects you significantly quicker, which is we feel that that's a good thing because you don't, again, back to the whole, I ate 10 milligrams and I don't feel it, so I'm going to eat 10 more, and then you had too much. So we use a water soluble THC version or formula in our drinks, and it actually tends to hit you in, obviously it depends on everybody's body chemistry, but 10 to 15 minutes, you can feel it. And that's generally before you have time to finish it, you're feeling it, which is closer to what alcohol does for you.
Yeah, exactly. Because as we talked about before the podcast, I had one before we recorded, so I could be like, okay, now I've had 2 flavors, I have a little bit more to talk about. And I'm like, but I should have one during the podcast, and I'm going to tell you, feeling it.
Excellent. I'm drinking one as well. I'm having a CBD version of the pomegranate Oh Hi, and it looked like that's what you were drinking too.
It was, yeah. It's also pomegranate. That's funny. Yeah, I was like, I'll save this one for the podcast. That sounds great. Like lemon lime, we all know that one. We all know what that's going to taste like. That's not a problem. Then I had the grapefruit. I'm like, well, historically, I'm kind of iffy on grapefruit, so I'll just drink that off air in case I hate it. And I'm like, you know what? This is garbage. And honestly, fine. It was fine. I was like, this is fine. This is an inoffensive grapefruit. I'm totally okay with this. But this pomegranate is legit. This tastes delicious.
Awesome. Thank you very much. We actually won with our THC version, which they're exactly the same flavor. We won first place at the High Times Cannabis Cup for Colorado. For edibles.
I should have gotten my buddy Ungayo on this thing. He's a judge of the Cannabis Cup worldwide.
Oh, nice. Awesome.
Yeah. Plus, he lives down the street. I could have just asked. I don't know why I didn't. Yeah. And so I don't think we touched on this yet. So Oh Hi, which is like a nice little greeting. Hey, welcome to CBD THC world. Oh Hi, good to see you. Is an offshoot of Ska Brewing.
Yep, that's correct. Ska Brewing was my first business that me and some friends started back in 1995. And, we're a fairly we're a regional brewery. We're distributed in roughly 10 states, and we export internationally. Sell a lot of beer in Scandinavia, which is really interesting. Yeah, it's been around for a while. It's still thriving well, and we have won a bunch of awards there for beers over the years. Again, we've been in business we were in our 25th year of business right now. Yeah, hard to believe.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we don't get to have our anniversary party this year like we do every year because of COVID. But we'll throw an extra big one for 26th anniversary next year. Hopefully.
Yeah. Hopefully. Yeah. Everything, like you're putting your feet in a few different spots. Dabbling around, and then like also, who knows what the hell is going to happen with what this is. Like, successful businesses are failing, upstarts are failing, they're succeeding, they're doing better than ever. Like, there's no guide to what's happening. Yeah,
it's hard to predict at this point in time.
Yeah. So how are you guys adapting, trying to stay alive during this terrible, terrible moment that is somehow becoming more than a moment?
Well, fortunately, for the brewery at least, can sales are going through the roof because people can't buy beer at restaurants really. So can sales are skyrocketing, which has been great for us. We have had to scale back our tap room here in Durango. We recently, I guess it's probably been about a month, we reopened for in-store service at our restaurant. And while it's not the same as it used to be, it's still been really good. All things considered, good is a relative term right now.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's not going to be what it was, but it's not as bad as it could have been.
Right. We tend to stay pretty full. On the days that we're open, we have limited hours right now. But I mean, our can sales though have really done well for us. Again, we're very fortunate that can sales have been strong. Colorado is a great market for us. It's our backyard. Durango's doing great too. So we've seen, we've had record-breaking numbers as far as can sales goes. Doesn't quite make up for the lost margin that we don't get out of the tasting room, but we'll take what we can get at this point.
Yeah, and you guys are actually pretty well set up for that transition to the canning life, as you also started another part of the Ska Brewing family.
Yeah, that's Ska Fabricating. That's a business that I kind of branched off from the brewery in 2012 and had designed we were early to the canning game, right behind Oscar Blues. We started canning back in 2003. And while we kept it fairly local for several years, we were hindered by the ability to expand our canning line in the facility that we were in. So when we built a new facility in 2008, we were able to expand our canning line, and we went from two guys filling 2 cans at a time, pulling cans off of a pallet to a more automated line. And in doing that, there wasn't a lot of equipment out there that was set up for small craft breweries.
Yeah.
And basically there was a guy standing on a ladder with a stick pushing cans onto a conveyor that then fed the filling line. And I knew that there had to be a better way than doing that. And I ended up designing a piece of equipment called a depalletizer for depalletizing the cans. It's basically kind of like a cage that the pallet of cans goes into, and it's got a hoist that lifts the pallet and sweeps the cans off and feeds them to the filling line. And it wasn't anything that wasn't out there. It was, no one made one small enough and dumb enough to handle the speeds that we were operating at.
Yeah.
And I had been calling around and like researching. It's like, all right, like this machine exists, but the people that I called, they would laugh at me when I told them that we were running at 30 cans a minute, because their machines were designed for 1,200 to 2,000 cans a minute.
Yeah. And, for certain other Colorado customers.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. For much larger Colorado customers.
Yeah.
They told me that like they could sell me a machine and it was 10 times as big as I needed, and also 10 times more expensive than what we could afford.
Yeah.
And so I said, all right, well, I set out and me and a buddy of mine built one, and it worked. It was better than what was out there. It was more affordable, and I didn't really have an intention of turning it into a business. But when somebody came through the brewery, they saw one. The guys at Austin Beer Works saw it, and they were like, "Oh my God, if you can build us one, we'll buy it from you." And I said, "For money?" Like, yeah, for money. I'm like, all right. So I built one for them, and it just kind of took off from there. I put a little post up on a Brewers Forum, Pro Brewer, and a little video of it in action, and said, "Hey, does anybody else need one of these?" And it literally exploded at that minute. And we've sold close to 800 machines worldwide. Jesus. And put in, installed canning lines. We've expanded what our capabilities are and what we do. And it's really turned into a really successful business that I totally was unintentional and really didn't have a business plan or a game plan at all. We're just like, all right, we'll make some and see what they do. And sure enough, people needed them and bought them.
Yeah. And in bulk, you're like, we should probably have a different thing handling this process for us.
Yeah. It's been really, honestly, caught me off guard, but it's been a great adventure. We've got over 50 employees, 56 employees there, a couple different facilities around Durango. And again, we're shipping them internationally. We've got them in, I think, 27 different countries now. And we don't just do beer cans. We do, obviously, anything that comes in a beer can, like kombucha, coffee, cider. But we've also expanded into the food market. We've done spice containers. We've done peanut butter jars. We've done anesthesia containers for pharmaceutical.
Oh, man.
It really is it's a versatile machine that there wasn't, it was a niche that wasn't being filled for small producers. And it really filled that niche well. And we've continued to expand into other markets and look at other opportunities of where people can put our machine.
That's incredible. Like, I like the history of cans and that can conversion that happened. Because when I started drinking beer back in the 2000s, after you guys were already like, yeah, we're already successful. I'm like, oh, what's beer? I remember like people were like, you got to get it in a bottle, man. You got to drink this thing out of a bottle. These cans, they affect the taste and all these things. And then Oscar Blues was like, well, what if you put this lining in here and it doesn't do that? Like Colorado's kind of the grounds for that.
Yep. Yeah, Oscar Blues was hands down. They were the ones that kicked it off. And I won't lie, when my partner, Dave Thibodeau, said, we should start canning, I was like, you're fucking crazy, dude. That is a bad idea. and then he showed me the canning line, which was two guys standing there filling cans. I was like, absolutely not. There's no way I'm going to do that. He eventually convinced me to do it. I reluctantly got stuck on the canning line for many years, filling cans. But it was the right thing to do. And it ended up being, obviously, the canning revolution took off. And breweries like Oscar Blues and Ska proved that you can get good beer in a can.
Yeah.
And it really changed the stigma that there is. They talk about, oh, it tastes like aluminum. And I tell people, it's like, no, that's not aluminum you're tasting. That was just the shitty beer that you were drinking.
Yeah, exactly. You were drinking hams. Like that's what the problem was.
Right.
You were drinking an old Milwaukee. That was the issue. Now we're going to put good things in it and make a better can. That's it. Like,
yep.
I think somebody dared mention they wanted something in a bottle the other day. I'm like, what? How could you? How could you do this to your beverage?
Yeah, these days I rarely look at the bottle aisle. I just go straight to cans because, well, they're easier, they recycle better, they taste better, cans do preserve the beer much better.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the last time I drank. Actually, I drank a bottle the other day, but it was a 2013 stout from Sweden that was absolutely delicious.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, all my bottles are going to be great. I don't get many anymore because they don't come out except for like anniversary beers, like those specialty one-off big boys. Those come, but like cans they're stackable, they're small, they're carryable, like they just fit everywhere better. Like a bottle's like, oh, I guess this extra 6 inches of height is just going to waste. Like you can't do anything with it.
Big waste of space in your fridge.
Yeah. Yeah, and my fridge is always like just barely tall enough, so like the really tall ones, like I can't even put it in here. I gotta lay it down, and now that's taking up all that space. I can't put anything on top of it. It's just like, but I can't. Like, throw 3 cans on top of each other. Perfect. We're good. Keep going. But so you guys have basically just been consistently pushing beer and like beverages forward since you guys have been started. So. You're now 25 years in. Like, what started this whole, I'm going to start a brewery and we're going to do all these crazy things over time?
Well, I started home brewing beer when I was 19 because I couldn't buy it. Mm-hmm. And I read the Papazian book, The Joy of Home Brewing, and was enamored with it. And I actually got a job working at another local brewery here, Durango Brewing Company, like 2 days after I turned 21. And I had been going down there and pretty much telling the guy down there, the owner at the time, that I'm going to work for you. I want to do something. I want to work in this industry. It looks fun. I like beer. And so I got a job as a keg washer there. I mean, I think I was one of 3 employees. I was washing kegs there and soaking up all the knowledge I could around craft beer and making beer, and just really it truly fascinated me, the science behind it, the engineering behind it, and the business side of it. And I just saw a ton of opportunity there. And I had a party back in, this was early 95, that I had a homebrew party, and I had like 5 of my own beers on tap. And these 2 guys showed up at the party. They had heard about it. And these 2 guys showed up, and they brought their own keg of homebrew, and it ended up being Bill and Dave from my now current partners at SCA. And they said that they were opening up a brewery, and got to talking with them over many beers. And,
as you did.
Yep. And ended up that, we were on the same wavelength. Durango Brewing Company, it was a small brewery. They had no intention of growing. I had every intention of expanding what we could do and seeing the opportunity around craft beer, and just realizing, like, once people go to craft beer, they're not going to go back. They're going to start drinking good beer. And it just kind of opened my eyes up. And I ended up leaving Durango Brewing Company and joining Bill and Dave at SCA. They had originally opened it up in 95. I joined them in 96.
Okay.
And it came on as a brewer. And then within a couple months, they were just like, man, you should figure out a way to invest. We need some money, for one.
Yeah.
And we would like you to become an equal partner while we're still young and early in the stage. And I was able to convince my parents that my college fund was going to be put better to use at investing in a brewery, which of course they thought was crazy. And they were like, you dropped out of college. You're working at a brewery. What makes you think we're going to give you some money to invest in the brewery? And I ended up convincing them over time. It took 6-8 months to convince them, like, this is really what I want to do. And I think it turned out to be a wise investment. So I bought into the brewery, and my buy-in was a couple of new tanks.
Okay.
That we desperately needed. And that's kind of how I got involved with SCA. And Bill and Dave, again, they were on the same page. They both liked craft beer. They wanted to see the brewery grow. We wanted to do more than what I was doing at Durango Brewing Company. And, it took a long time being in Durango and growing. We were all young. I was 22, and I think Bill and Dave were 25 at the time. And, I mean, this was hands down the craziest thing at that age, diving into a business making beer and all the capital involved. And fortunately, we had Bill's parents were fortunate enough to loan us some money here and there so that we could do incremental financing, buying equipment as needed. Yeah. And it really allowed us to kind of grow. We took a little slower approach than a lot of, I would say, people that know more about borrowing money.
Raising funds.
Raising funds. We didn't do it that way. We were solely either bank financed or family financed, and didn't take on any investors, and still haven't to this day taken on any investors.
Nice. Yeah, because I think a lot of people back in those days were coming from a restaurant background or some other business background, then getting into beer as a passion project. So they already knew how to get that financing going. You're like, I'm 22. But also for you, a benefit is like, if you can sell your parents on that, you can sell anybody on the beer, right? You already made the hardest sale possible. Like, everything else is easy. This is shooting fish in a barrel.
Yep. Yeah, it definitely took some convincing, that's for sure, though.
Yeah. Yeah, I have the same. My parents were like, why are you doing this podcast? Why are you doing comedy? Like, all these things, like, they like don't understand it. Like, why don't you have a day job? Just do that. Why are you, what's with these weird passion projects? And then they're like, oh, I finally get it. Like, there's this weird, like, they want you to be they want your life to be easy, I think. They're like, we love you, but we'd like it to be easier for you. Why are you making it so hard?
Get a job and get away from us.
Yeah. If you do this and you fail, you're going to be right back here. I can't deal with that ramification.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So I noticed you said you were homebrewing at 19. Now, I assume you weren't like a chemistry major who's like, I just find this part interesting. I imagine you probably had somebody who introduced you to craft beer and you're like, hey, I want to make something that's not this American light lager. I imagine there was somebody or something that kind of made you interested in it.
Yeah, I had a roommate. He was actually when I was in college, he was in my dorm together. He kind of is the one, Scott McWilliams. He introduced me to craft beer, and he introduced me to good beer. He had a friend that actually worked for New Belgium.
Okay.
And he would come down and bring low fills down to Durango, and we would sit around and hammer those down, and that really opened my eyes up to craft beer. And then a couple of buddies of mine, we lived in a party house, 4 of us living in the house, and we started learning about homebrew, and we read, like, oh my God, there was a local food store that sold a homebrew kit. The 4 of us went in on the homebrew kit and started making beer, and it was terrible. I don't think we dumped any of it, but we probably should have.
Yeah.
We drank it all. And my one of the guys that I went in on it with, he became a little bit more passionate about it than the other two. So the other two just liked drinking it. They didn't like the making part. Yeah. So me and him started making a lot of beer, and he had a different theory on it. He wanted to, like, let's bottle it and save it. I was like, no, let's put it in a keg and let's have a party and drink it all. Don't worry, we'll make more. So yeah, we ended up at the house that we lived in. We ended up brewing, 2-3 times a week, and we would bottle off a little bit for my buddy to save, and then I would keg off some, and then we'd have a big party, on a probably almost bi-weekly basis, and have kegs of homebrew and invite our friends over and drink it up. And it just became, people were into it. They really dug it, and they liked the handcrafted part. People would come over and watch us brew and drink beer at the same time. It was pretty neat.
Yeah, and I think that's a story that everybody that gets into it kind of tells. Is this weird build up and the community that comes along. And to your 2 friends who stopped brewing, it's not a problem. The world needs drinkers. Otherwise you don't have anybody to sell to. If they're all making it, what are you supposed to do? Right.
Somebody's got to drink it, right? Yeah. They were really good at drinking it too.
Perfect. That's the ideal. So you have, like we've discussed a few times, 25 years in this industry with ska, let alone the time with Durango Brewing. Like, when you were starting out, what was the beer scene like? What was it like people were demanding? What were the things you had to, like, educate people about? And has that really changed?
Well, amber ales, that was the big thing because everybody was used to drinking light lagers. So coming out with an amber ale that was drinkable, and a brown ale were big ones back then. Like, oh my God, a brown ale, holy crap! So it was a lot of education and really putting it in front of people. Fortunately, because of our time in Durango, it was relatively easy to bring on new accounts for us because we knew every bartender in town.
Yeah.
It was an easy sell when we came in and we're like, hey, Joe, we just got a new batch out. Will you try putting it on tap? And so we were able to do a lot of guerrilla style sales because we knew the people that were selling the beer. We knew the bartenders. It was an easy, at that point in time, it wasn't, you didn't have beer buyers. You just convinced the bartender, like, hey, you should put us on. It wasn't this crazy process with this wide selection, and it was locally made. So it was easy for them to get behind it and support us. And once we, and then, again, frequent trips to the bar at night helped reinforce the sales when you could go around and say, hey, man, let me buy you a beer. Try this new beer we got out. Certainly not quite the same these days, just because there's so much variety and selection out there.
Yeah, and then there's those beer buyers, like you mentioned, who like already know what they're looking for. They're aware of your product. They're looking for the next cool thing, and you're like, but we're the old standard, and we do new things. And they're like, yeah. Has that kind of been like an issue moving forward?
Absolutely, man. That's one thing that I would say a lot of breweries, especially the more established breweries, complain about, which is like, what happened to our loyal following of all these great beers that we make? What happened to the standard ones, the standard session beers that you could drink several of, and now everybody's looking for the new, latest, and greatest. And I think that that's an evolution that will eventually change too. And I think people will finally start to settle down when the new isn't so new anymore. And then you realize you can only put so many different kinds of hops in one beer, that they all kind of start to taste the same. And don't get me wrong, I do enjoy some variety, but I think it's getting a little crazy right now. And hopefully people start to get back to more staples. And I don't know what those staples are necessarily going to be.
Yeah.
But just some consistency in purchasing. I finally found something that I like, that's reliable, and it's good, and I want to go back and buy that same one again. I trust that brand, and I trust that beer.
Yeah, and I think that's really what it is trusting the brand as opposed to the beer is kind of what it's become. I can trust that I can go here and try the new thing. I want a new thing, but I know that they usually knock these things out, so I can go there and I can trust it. Like, I think your guys' beer is one of those beers. So I'm in California. Scott doesn't have a big presence currently, let alone years ago. But I remember I was going to my sister's wedding in Kansas City, Kansas. And I was like, we need beers for this thing. There's no beers. Everybody's drinking mixed drinks and wine. And I'm like, I'm a beer guy, so I got to go find some beers. And I was like, I'd heard of Modus Operandi. I knew of what it was. I knew its reputation. And I found it. I'm like, oh, shit. Okay, this is what I'm getting. And it was delicious. I was like, yes, okay, great. I love it when a beer lives up to its reputation.
Nice. Yeah, Modus was one of our breakthrough beers for us. Prior, that was, right at the very cusp of the IPA craze, and right also at the cusp of the hop shortage, which I complained adamantly about. Like, this is a bad idea. Why are we releasing this, ridiculously hopped beer when hop pricing is at an all-time high? And it was good. It ended up being good timing. It put us on the map. Yeah. People really tasted Modus and were like, oh my God, this beer is incredible. And it really opened up a lot of people's eyes to IPAs. And by no means were we the ones that set it off, but we were some of the few breweries that were out there putting out a really good IPA
that
and
was
turned
massively
people
available.
hops. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I forgot what I was going to ask because I do this all the time. I always forget what I'm going to do. So you were there, like we were talking about, for the ambers and the browns, and then as IPA started trickling in, did you find it to be challenging to kind of learn on the fly all these new things that are happening as you're kind of one of the old school brewers at this point in time? Even though you're still innovating, you're like, well, we've still got to make this transition to what beer drinkers are wanting. Yeah,
it is a constant challenge trying to keep track of what is going to be the next new style, and are we chasing styles or are we innovating styles? And that is something it's really hard to predict right now. And now the variety and the number of breweries out there, it's almost impossible. And that's why we try and I don't want to say that we innovate outside of the scope of what's popular, but we do have to do a little bit of both. We have to do some innovation, and then we gotta follow the trends and put some beers out that are trending, that people like, and we got to still sell beer no matter what.
Yep. At the end of the day, you are a business. It's a whole thing.
Yep. And some of the styles I'm not particularly fond of, or I'm like, really? I have grown to like hazy IPAs, but I will say that when they first came out, I struggled immensely with the concept of a cloudy beer.
Yeah. And then
we'd spent years perfecting clear beer to come out and have the rug pulled out from underneath us to be like, oh no, it's hazy now. Now we want it hazy.
Yeah.
But I have grown to like them now, and I think that there's a lot of good qualities in several varieties out there.
Yeah. My issue wasn't really with how it looked so much as a lot of them were astringent, and they had a hop burn I didn't like. Like a lot of them were poorly made, and there was an issue with like how that affected what it was like to feel that beer. And I've had to come around to hazies too.
Yes. Yeah.
And the hill I will die on. Milkshake IPAs can go to hell. I can say that as a person who's not in the brewing industry. I know you have your own thoughts on it. I'm not going to make you put them out in public, but as far as I'm concerned, milkshake IPAs are the bane of my existence. I don't find them at all appealing. If you're going to use vanilla and lactose and all these fruits, just make a good sour. That's way more enjoyable to me.
Yeah. No, I struggle with some of the styles out there now as well.
It's like this could be put to better use, but it's fine. It's maybe I'm sure someone makes a killer milkshake IPA, and I just haven't had it, and I'll keep trying them. I'm not an idiot. I'm not gonna say I'm never gonna do this again because I had one bad one. I had a great brewed IPA. The first time I had a brewed IPA, I'm like, this is the future. Then I had like 5 more. I'm like, oh, that one place made it really well.
Yep. Yeah, I'll try anything.
Yeah,
I like it all. I mean, but I might not try it again.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. Never hurts to try. What if it ends up being the love of your life? You got to find out.
Absolutely. You don't know till you try it.
Yeah. And you guys are just like continuing to innovate and push forward because like we already talked about, you got the fabrication business, you've got the Oh Hi business, which seems like a natural extension. Was this something that was germinating for a while for you guys? Or was it like one day we're like, maybe we do this?
No, it was I have separate business partners in Oh Hi.
Okay.
And they own a chain of dispensaries in Durango. I should say in Southwest Colorado. And I had been talking to them, as friends, just like, man, we should figure out a way to put weed in a can. Like I was thinking about actually putting like flower, buds in a can and nitrogen sealing it, which they do now. And I was talking to them, this was probably 7 or 8 years ago, of like, man, we got to figure out a way to somehow incorporate the aluminum can and weed somehow. And then they approached me a couple years ago and they said, hey man, what about making a beverage? Because their water soluble THC was on the cusp of starting to come out. And it kind of blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, that's weed in a can in a beverage format. That's awesome. I love it. And so I dove head first into researching more about like, what is it going to take to do this? I knew that we couldn't combine alcohol with it. So I knew that beer wasn't really an option, although non-alcoholic beer is an option. There's something about non-alcoholic beer that I don't want to say I'm not particular. I haven't found one that I love.
Okay.
But I didn't like the idea when I thought about what it was going to involve. Like, okay, so we got to brew beer, which I already know how much work that is. Then we got to take the alcohol out of it, and then we got to put the drugs back in it.
Yeah.
Didn't make sense to me. So when we started talking, we were looking at all kinds of different options for beverages, and we settled on seltzers because they were rising in popularity. They're relatively easy to make. And with the distillate, the water soluble distillate, it was an easy way to infuse that into the product, and trying to stick with the low calorie, low sugar, not a lot of extra ingredients that people don't want. I'm a huge sparkling water person. I drink way too much of it. So I wanted something that was easily quaffable, like a sparkling water, but maybe had a little bit more flavor in it, so that it wasn't. I didn't want to drink the whole can in one sitting. I wanted to be able to have something that was like, all right, this is something that I can. I didn't want to crush the can in one setting like I can with sparkling water. I wanted to be able to sip on something. So we settled on seltzers, and White Claw was just starting to take off because we started the project in mid 2018.
Yeah, so that's right up there.
Yeah, right then, and it seemed like, hey, these seltzers are looking like they're going to go somewhere. Let's do a seltzer. Let's run with it. And so we settled on the low calorie, low sugar seltzer water.
And do you guys have a sparkling water varietal yet, or are you planning on that at all?
We do it. We have a sparkling water varietal at SCA. We call it Skagua.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, we've been making Skagua on draft at the tap room for at least 10 years. And we just have a tap that we make kegs of, and it's free for people to go get and pour. And ultimately it was like, we need something other than beer to drink at work, and I want carbonation in it. Yeah. So I developed Skagua 10 years ago, and we just started canning it like last year, finally. We don't do much distribution with it, but it's a fun product. We sell it here locally primarily, and it's a flavored sparkling water.
It's Durango sparkling water.
It's Durango sparkling water. Yep.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
It's like, is this, since you're so far into the business and stuff, is this like just my mind's spinning? I've got some ideas. Let's try them out.
Absolutely. My mind is spinning all the time, and I'm always thinking about opportunities and sniffing out. I don't want to say what's new or what's next, more around what do I like? And is there an opportunity to turn it into a business? Is there an opportunity to make money off doing this? And I don't want to sound like a capitalist, but is there a way to bring this product that I like to the masses so that other people can enjoy it too?
Right. That's the way you frame it. That's what you got. It's like, no, this is for other people. I'm doing this for other people, and it just happens I'm making the money on it.
Right, exactly. I'm doing it because I like it. And if I can make some money doing it and make people happy, then that's great.
Yeah, perfect. I don't need it. It'd be nice because unfortunately our society requires that I have this in order to continue to survive. So I'm going to do it. I wish I didn't have to. It's just how it is. And if it ends up making me more than I expected, great. And I'll figure out what to do with that excess. That's totally fine. Yeah. Oh, man. So have you infused your Skagua at all with THC or CBD, or are you leaving it clean and clear for the kiddies?
We're leaving it clear at this point in time. And we sell it sell it to kids. We didn't sell it to kids, but we need something that kids could drink too, because we have a very family friendly tap room, and all of my partners and myself have kids. So it was like, and we had the equipment to do it. Like, we've got the equipment to do it. We should make it. It's good. It tastes good. People like it. Let's do it.
Yeah. And then, so I don't think we've even talked at all about the SCA name. I know I talked to Arlo, one of your sales reps, last year about it. Mm-hmm. But how do you feel about ska music? Was that part of the thing that brought you into this group? Or were you like the one guy like, nah, ska's fine, I guess, but...
my two partners are definitely ska freaks. They've been into ska music much longer than I have. I was more along for the ride. I've always listened to ska and punk rock, but I'm not necessarily a huge music geek by any means. I certainly enjoy music and listen to it. I was more along the lines on the beer side and on the engineering side and on the business side. I loved the fact that it associated ska music, the association with ska music. I liked the motive behind it, and I was totally on board with it. Again, listening to punk rock all the time when I was younger, it just seemed to be a good fit. They're always talking about drinking beer and partying all the time, and it seemed like a good fit. So yeah, I wanted to run with it. I was totally down with it, and thought that we got skulls, and I can remember back in probably 97, we had our anniversary party, and we were giving away bongs and your weight in beer. And these were things that people just were like, people were like, you can't do that. We're like, yeah, no, we can. We can, and we like to. We like, the weed influence and the association, and, we're punk rock. We're hardcore. We can do whatever we want.
And then they're like, actually, you can't. You're like, well, before there weren't rules against it, so we did it. And then.
Right. Right. Now it's a little harder to get away with that now.
Yeah. That's the punk ethos. You got to skirt the rule till they make it a rule. That's the rule.
Right. Exactly. You got to push it till they tell you can't.
Yeah. And you got to find your way around it. It's like, no, we're in the right here. This is a totally, like, I always find it very strange that that beer is like, yeah, absolutely, go get drunk all you want to, but don't smoke weed was always weird to me. That
yeah,
it's like, why?
Right. Yeah, that's always been weird to me. I've been a fan of marijuana for many years, so yeah. I never understood that why, and I still don't understand it. It's like, man, when are they going to just figure it out that this is really not a bad thing?
Yeah, like I like to. I'm not a historian. I'm not a political person. Although now politics definition has changed apparently to decent humanity versus monster. But I've always kind of noticed trends. I'm data driven. There we go. And I've noticed that oftentimes the time when there's a surge civilly for a movement, politically doesn't change for about 30 to 35 years. And that's and now we live in a digital age where things change like daily, and it's like, but that still is a 35-year process because we still are like, we don't care about new senators. They've got to like establish themselves and like get of age and get elected and get reelected and grow this power and finally have the ability to like make the change they wanted to make when they were 20. And we have to hope that they still want to make that change. It's a bonkers system.
It is a bonkers system, that's for sure.
But it's funny because like, so we've got all these hippies in the 60s really pushing weed and drugs, and now they're finally in authority. So around 2003, 2008, that was kind of the range where like weed was starting to get pushed as legalized. And that's 35 to 40 years. Boom, nailed it. I'm so good at this, like, and then I don't know if I put this on the podcast at all ever, just because we're already on the topic. Fun fact about history as well. World superpowers only last about 240 years. That's as long as they can last before they crumble. They can come back though. They can come back. It could just be a couple decades, but it's generally speaking we're at our peak freshness, I guess. Anyway, this is a fun way to close. Get me out of this is what I meant the whole time. But yeah. Anyway, so knowing that the end of the world is nigh, it's great that you're giving people an opportunity to find a way to explore themselves and their humanity, so they can hopefully find it and preserve all the good things that have made the world a pleasure to live in.
Yeah.
Did I spin it right? Did I spin it into a positive?
Yeah. The world is adapting and changing on a minute by minute basis right now, and hopefully we'll make it through all this in a better place.
Yeah, that's the dream. Yeah, so as far as Oh Hi, going back to that, I've kind of wandered away from it for a while because there's so many things we can talk about when you've done as much as you've done. What do you see as far as, is this going to stick to seltzers? Are you planning on moving into other products that you can kind of slip that stuff into, or?
Yeah, we are exploring other flavors, definitely. We actually are coming out with a much to my dismay, a much stronger version, because that's what the Colorado market is demanding. So we're coming out with a 100 milligram version.
What?
Yes, but it's not a seltzer. It's not something that you sip on. It's just a flavored beverage that is ideally served in small increments if you need small increments, or large increments if you need large increments. One of the challenges that we've encountered in Colorado is that the bud tenders here are essentially the salespeople. And I hate to say it like this, but if they don't like you, they don't sell much product of yours. And they tend to be high tolerance individuals.
Mm-hmm.
So we're kind of catering to what they want and what they have asked for in coming out with our 100 milligram version. And there's a lot of other 100 milligram versions out there. We're not the only ones that are doing milligrams. There's a bunch of different varieties out there, and they're typically served, a cap full at a time. So we just decided that, all right, our flavor profiles are good. We've got a good knack for coming up with good flavors. So we're going to come out with a 100 milligram version. And we're actually looking at coming out with a 100 milligram caffeinated version as well. Okay. So mixing the buzz up a little bit. But we're always thinking of what's next. We got an Arnold Palmer recipe that we're playing with, a Mandarin orange recipe that we're playing with, and just keeping an eye on what's out there and what seems to be something that people will like. And some of that has to do with like, all right, what do I like? So trying to continue to play around with it and see what we can come up with next.
Yeah. And me being my brain does this sometimes, and I have to say it, or else I'm going to tell people randomly a bunch. I'll just tell it to you. You were talking about like 100 milligram, high potency, put it in a cap. You want to make sure that people aren't like going crazy with it and just chugging a whole bottle. Let me suggest making it a spicy beverage as well. Capsaicin. You're welcome. I'm so helpful.
That's funny that you mentioned that, because I am one of the few people that really love spicy beers.
Yeah.
I love green chili beer. I think it's delicious. There's a brewery here in town that makes a great green chili beer. I get it every time I go there. And I have pitched the idea of a spicy beverage. We're not quite sure. We need to test the water. That's a bold statement to do. Yeah. So before we go there, we're going to try and get some more run-of-the-mill flavors out of the market before we go spicy. But I think a spicy beverage would be delicious.
I mean, mango habanero's a can't-miss combo.
Totally. Right. That's one that we proposed. Like, mango habanero would be so good. Oh, my God. A little burn on the way down. It's perfect. Like, take a shot.
I think back before Ballast Point was bought the first time, they had a spicy sculpin, I think. They had like a habanero sculpin. And I remember I ordered it at this bar, like, do you want a taste of this first? I was like, no, just give it to me. They're like, I want to make it very clear to you, you want a taste. I'm like, no, just give me the whole thing. Like, no, every person who has ordered a pint has returned it to us. I'm like,
oh, really?
I'm like, no, give it to me. I will drink it. Like, to me, I was like, I liked that beer. I'd already had it. I was like, no, I've had it. I'm ordering it with purpose here. But also they had that curry beer, the Indra Kunindra. Loved it. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure maybe 3 other people on Earth like, yeah, this is what I want. But the people that wanted it, like, love it and will come get it.
Yeah, no, that's a good tip. I'll keep thinking on it.
I'm the professional here. No, I don't know. I just like spitballing when I hear something. I'm like, oh, this made my brain think of this. There's a way to do this. I don't know. I was like, capsaicin, great, heat, let's do it. All right, easy fix. But yeah, so I think we should wrap it up. You have things to do. I'm taking up all your time. I know you're very busy. There's a lot of social engagements you need to get to right now in July of 2020, the worst time.
Big party. I gotta get.
Yeah, exactly. So where can people find Oh Hi products? How can they get them? What's the plan? Or learn more?
Well, you can go to ohhibev.com and you can order our CBD products online. And you can find our store locator for our THC products. That'll show you where the dispensaries in Colorado that are selling it. We are trying to stay on top of updating our CBD side as well. It's a little harder to go through distributors versus direct sales. But yeah, go to ohhibev.com and please order some CBD products online and come to Colorado if you're not already here, and go to your local dispensary. And if they don't have it, ask for it.
Yeah, that is important. I think customers making it clear that they want your product is an important part when you're trying to introduce a new product into the market. You got to get those early adopters, telling those people that are handling the money that this is a worthwhile investment.
That was it. I relate back to how we grew the brewery back in the day. That was what we used to say. If they don't carry it, go ask the bartender for it. Go ask them because they don't carry it here. And you get enough people asking for it, they'll eventually carry it.
Yeah. Exactly. And then as far as the social media, where can people find Oh Hi Beverages?
It's at Oh Hi Bev on Instagram. And then we've got a Facebook page for Oh Hi Beverages as well.
Nice. All right, Matt Vincent, anything else you want to talk about before we get out of here?
I'm all good, Ben. Thank you very much for your time, and thanks for doing this interview. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks so much, Matt. I really appreciate it. This has been episode 131 of Barley and Me. You can follow Barley and Me across social media at Barley and Me Pod. You can get T-shirts for Barley and Me at zenthreads.com. That's zen-threads.com. Right now, during this shutdown, every penny of profit will go to support Another Rally, which supports service industry workers affected by the shutdown worldwide. So if you buy it, I don't make money. Other people get helped. Do it. It's a fancy shirt. It's a nice shirt. Get the shirt. Also, if you're on my Instagram, check out my chugs for charity. Every couple of days, I'll chug a beer, and then I'll say what the charity will be. A lot of times right now, we're doing social justice movements with the Black is Beautiful beers out. I'm chugging those. I'm supporting the causes that the breweries that make them are doing. Also doing service industry workers that are affected, social programs, because there are people that are struggling. So I'm doing what I can. So check those out. Do your own chugs for charity, and you could be entered to win free beer from my beer cellar. So chugs for charity, chugs number 4 charity, Barley and Me Pod across social media. Oh my God, this has been episode 131 of Barley and Me with Matt Vincent from Oh Hi Beverages. Thanks so much for listening. Get home safe.